Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everyone today?
Good.
Wonderful.
The gospel message this morning is from Mark, chapter 1, verses 29 through 39. Jesus and his disciples, including James and John, left the synagogue and went straight to the home of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was sick in bed with a fever, and as soon as Jesus arrived, he was told about her. He went to her, took her by the hand, and the fever left her, and she began to wake up. After the sun had set and evening had come, people brought to Jesus all the sick and those who had demons. All the people of the town gathered in front of the house. Jesus healed many who were sick with all kinds of diseases and drove out many demons. He would not let the demons say anything, because they knew who he was. Very early the next morning, long before daylight, Jesus got up and left the house. He went out of town to a lonely place where he prayed. But Simon and his companions went out searching for him. And they found him. They said, "Everyone is looking for you." But Jesus answered, "We must go on to the other villages around here. I have to preach in them also, because that is why I came." So he traveled all over Galilee, preaching in the synagogues and driving out demons. The passage I just read had Jesus healing that were sick and forcing out demons. There aren't any indications or examples of what or who was being healed, just that it took place. Could have been a common cold, a flu, cancer, broken bones. We just don't know. We also don't know, we don't talk about demons that much. And I'm certainly not an expert on one, so I'm not really going to go there. But depending upon what site you look at on the web, you can get confused about it. One simple explanation is that they are fallen angels that were forced out of heaven with Satan. They are also described as being descendants of the great giants, and this is where my non-English speaker from, also known as Goliath, who lived before the flood in that paternal descendants. That is, of course, bring up other questions, and we're not going to go there either. This passage does reinforce what the two passages tell us, that God can do anything. We sing about opening our hearts, our ears, and our minds, but why don't we grasp what we have been told from the beginning? We don't know what we don't know, but we should know. We have heard it before. It has been told to us from the beginning. We try to understand the foundations of earth terms that we want to be the explorer through science. We want to find things out for ourselves. We have difficulty believing that God sits above the earth, and we and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. That God stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads. And then there's a tent that we live in, which brings princes to naught and makes the rulers of earth as nothing. We want to believe that our rulers are just like us, that they have the same power as we do, no more, no less. When Isaiah was written, spread throughout the earth, scattered into small communities, barely making any existence. A warm wind would go through, and the crop would be ruined. That meant that they wouldn't have much to eat the next year. Fire, floods, windstorms, storms, all these things we call nature that affect how we live even today. I understand what it was out in California, but it would affect us here. To whom then do we compare God to, or who is God's equal? Lift up your eyes on high and see, because he is great in strength, mighty in power. No one is missing. Even today, who can say, "My way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God"? As you're walking down a dark road, I don't know how many times I've done this, been kicking stones along down through, throwing sticks up. Nobody else around me. But God knew what I was doing. How can we keep something from God when God sees all? A parent lets a child crawl across the floor to explore its surroundings, watching all the time. The child would climb over chairs, maybe onto counters, maybe onto tables. The child may not see the parent, but the parent is always watching the child and knowing what the child is looking for. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary, but his understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, the powerless. I don't know how many times I was out doing what we call a force march. It might be 3, it might be 24 miles. Maybe nothing on my back, may have a 60-pound pack. You get tired after a while. The difference is how old you were, old being 20, maybe 25, you still had to go that distance. And at the end of the march, you would see somebody else who hadn't been on the march zip right on by you, and you're just saying, I need to go that fast. I just can't do it right now. But you get regenerated. Eventually you would. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up like wings on eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. There was a study done by a major insurance company when I was in Kansas, and had promising results about taking what we now call a power nap. Sometime, it depends, it varies from everybody, but there's a time in the afternoon when you just kind of shut down. You may not even be aware of it. 2-3 seconds. And I tried to convince my boss that that's what I needed, was a short power nap. That's just what my boss did. But it does show that a midday nap is good for all of us. At the end of the first passage, Jesus took a rest and then went on to other cities around this area to spread his gospel. Paul in 1 Corinthians says that he has no right to boast just because he preaches the gospel. Don't ever let me think, don't let me ever boast that either. If you start seeing a chip on my shoulder, please knock it off. What right do I have to tell, encourage, chastise, or even explain what God desires from you, any one of you? None whatsoever. Paul says he was under orders to do so, and how terrible it would be for him if he did not preach the gospel. If Christians, a follower of Christ, then shouldn't we also be preaching? Now, not all of us like the limelight. One wants to be up here at the podium, and I can't say as I really want to be, but at the same time, sometimes you have to do what you don't really feel comfortable doing. There's times when you just know that it has to be done. And at the end of the day, you feel good about doing it. Getting up at 5:30 in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, standing out in the cold rain, maybe a little bit of snow sometimes, just waiting for somebody to say, right face, double time, was not necessarily a good thing that I wanted to do. But I did feel good at the end. Paul goes on to say, if I did my work as a matter of free choice, I have to be paid. But I do it as a matter of duty, because God has entrusted me with this task. What pay then do I get? It is the privilege of preaching the good news without charging for it, without claiming my rights in my work for the gospel. In those days, to be a temple priest meant that you were at it for a week or two at a time, not for life as we expect our pastors to be nowadays. It was not a profession back then. That is why Paul goes on to say, I am a free man, nobody's slave. But I make myself a slave in order to win as many people as possible. Paul is on a mission to save souls. He doesn't need anyone to pay his way of life while doing it. God will provide what he needs, not man. Paul tells us that his method of relating to those around him is to live and act like them. Notice when he says, while working with the Jews, I live like a Jew in order to win them, even though I myself am not subject to the law of Moses. I live as though I were when working with those who are, order to live, in order to win them. In the same way, when working with Gentiles, I live like a Gentile, outside of the Jewish law, in order to win Gentiles. This does not mean I don't obey God's law. I am really under Christ's law. In the weak in faith, I become weak like them, in order to win them. So I become all things to all people, that I may save some of them by whatever means possible. All I do this for the gospel's sake, in order to share in its blessing. Paul is saying he's putting himself and those that are around him in their place. He's trying to walk in their shoes, to understand what they've been through. That's sometimes hard to do. It's hard to put yourself as a caregiver in the case of someone who has trouble standing because their knees won't bend. Someone who feels a little unsure about the ice that's outside right now, and yet we would not have a problem walking across it. We don't have that fear of falling and perhaps breaking an arm or leg or a hip. It's possible, but we kind of think it's not going to happen. And the younger you are, the less you're aware of it. Children, 8, 9, 10 years old, don't think twice about slipping on ice. Just a little extra padding, I guess. Take someone who's 80 or 90, it makes a big difference for them. But Paul would put himself in their place and try still to bring them to Christ. Paul is telling us what he becomes like one of those he is witnessing to bring them to Christ. Not for his glory, but to bring glory to Jesus, and this brings glory to God. To save others, to bring them to Christ, is Paul's only mission, so that he can share in the gospel's blessing. After Jesus had healed many people, he got up and left the house very early the next morning, and left the house and left town to pray by himself. But Simon and his companions went out in search for Jesus, and finding him, they said that everyone was looking. Jesus, we must go to the other villages around here. I have to preach to them also, because that's why I came. I don't know really what regenerates anyone here. I had an aunt that I think got regenerated when she went fishing. She'd go out for a couple of hours and fish. She always caught a limit. If there was a fish in that stream, she would find it. She'd come back. A couple of hours later, somebody else would ask her to go fishing. Not knowing she'd already gone, she would go. Hope there aren't any game wardens around here. She's passed on now. I have another aunt that's the same way with her garden. She spent a lot of time in it. But she always came back in rejuvenated. I don't know what rejuvenates you. I just hope that you will use that, whatever it is, when you feel that you need that rejuvenation. Yeah. I like to think that that's what this is for. That's the time now that you will be rejuvenated. So let's prepare to go into the world, shouting in our own way of God's glory. Not because of his power, but because of his wisdom and mercy to all, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.